Yeah. So
So
Debbie, yeah, I'm so excited to see you and have the continuation up from last time. And it's been a while, it's been about a month, but you promised me we were going to talk about boundaries. So I'm so excited because this is one of the things that people struggle with all the time. So I'm captivated. I'm waiting.
Well, I'm excited. And like Tammy said, I am Debbie McRae. I'm a licensed counselor and a CSAT therapist working out of Mesa, Arizona. My specialty is working with betrayed partners in the individual and group settings. And I use it using the codependence model, which I am passionate about. And she's right. Today, we're going to talk about boundaries and how it relates to the fear cycle. The last time we met, I really went into the fear cycle, what is part of the fear cycle, how it presents itself, and I did give a few tools. So as a reminder, I just want to kind of describe the fear cycle briefly before we get into the type of boundaries that are really important to put into place. So what typically happens when a betrayed partner goes into fear is there's a trigger that takes them into fear, worry. It's usually combined with hurt, even anger. And as a result, they go into some obsessions or obsessive thinking. I call it, that's the stories they go into, and they start telling themselves, and this continues to feed the fear. As a result, then, the betrayed partner wants to take and begin to control their fear, so they go into control behaviors. And the control behaviors look like, I've got to do everything right. I'm going to be the best wife. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to be the best mom. I'm going to redecorate the house. So we're really working at controlling our fear by controlling our environment and ourselves. The other way we control fear is we let everything go. And it's almost like we numb out, we eat, we spend money, we don't care, we just give up. So it's a way of also avoiding the fear. And so today what we're going to talk about is, what do you do when you're in that fear cycle? What boundaries do you put into place, not only before you go into the fear cycle, but while you're in the fear cycle to help you get out of it? I came across a quote this week that I really liked, and it's by Nedra Tawwab. Nedra Glover Tawwab does the books Set Boundaries, Find Peace. She says this: life is filled with lots of choices, and I think of boundaries as choices. So I love that idea, as boundaries are a choice. So today we're going to talk about the choices that you have when you're in the fear cycle. So on a positive side, fear can be motivating because it can cause us to really look at our boundaries, reestablish our boundaries, set healthier boundaries. And today we're going to talk a lot about the internal boundaries that the betrayed partner can set. These internal boundaries create space for healing and really do assist the betrayed partner with their fear and moving them from that limbic state with their brain being offline to that state where they're really grounded, they're in their body, they're working out of the prefrontal cortex part of their brain. So I like to think of it this way. We change the betrayed partner's thinking from what if, which is very fear-based. It's what if this happens? What if my partner relapses? What if I never get out of my trauma? What if my relationship doesn't work? And it shifts it, which is kind of that future fearing, attitude, into one where it's this. Well, if this happens, then I will do this. So if this happens, then I'm going to choose to do this. And then the betrayed partner can choose a healthier choice as to what they're going to do. So this week, it was really interesting. I went into group prepared to talk about fear. And as we were doing our intros and checking into group, two of the group members decided that they need to talk about fear, process fear, which I just so happened to come in prepared for. So as part of what we did in group was, I had put around the room these signs, and on the signs I put different frequencies that their fear has been triggered. So for example, I put down never triggered. They're never triggered into their fear. Once a week, several times a week, 2 to 3 times a week is what I think I put. Several times a month. I think I did bi-weekly. We did all sorts of, different frequencies. And I said, okay, I want you to go stand by the sign, that represents where you're at with your fear. And it was really interesting because everybody moved and they knew right away where they were at in their fear. And so then I went around the room and I asked them, okay, now that you're in your fear and you know what your fear is like, what do you do? What's the boundary you put into place so that you can step out of that fear cycle? And they all were really readily and easily able to, rather, come up with that idea that's going to get them out of the fear cycle. So let's talk in general about some of these internal boundaries and getting out of the fear cycle. So we've got to remember that we all have a choice over how we respond to our fear. So we need to be able to recognize our fear and know what it looks like and what it feels like. What thinking leads us into fear. So we have to have a lot of self-awareness. So it's really important that you as a betrayed partner recognize these are the thoughts that make me feel so much fear, so much worry, because you've got to start catching yourself when you're going into those thoughts. The other thing is that fear shows up differently in our bodies. And I talk about this all the time. You've got to recognize where you feel the fear in your body. Oftentimes, that's where you know you're in fear very first. We feel it in our bodies first, physiologically, and then we can kind of backtrack a bit and go, okay, what was I just telling myself? What are the stories I'm into? It's really important that the betrayed partner commits to embracing this self-awareness and in being willing to put these internal boundaries into place. So a couple of things they have to choose is they have to choose to step out of behavior and avoid behavior that leaves the betrayed partner feeling uncomfortable or damages the relationship with the addict partner when they are in their fear. These internal boundaries protect the addict partner not only from themselves, but also from others, including the addict partner, because it gives them the ability to filter their feelings and what they need to do with them. It helps them sort through their intense fear and make a choice. And so then the betrayed partner gets to decide, how am I going to then take the next step and either express my fear or take an action that will help alleviate my fear, learn from my fear, because the fear is there to make us aware of something. At least that's my belief regarding emotions. They show up because they're making us aware of something, and we need to stop and pay attention to it rather than fighting it or giving into it. We need to learn from it first. So here's some specific boundaries that the betrayed partner can put into place. Like I've already said, and I'm going to say it again, the betrayed partner needs to make that intentional choice to not stay in their fear. And like I said, they've got to know their own individual fear cycle. I'll give you an example. It's the betrayed partner who knows that if they go and they start looking at bank records, which they've looked at 50 times previously because they think they're going to find something, that they start going into their fear cycle and they rapidly become limbic. And then the addict partner comes home from work, they're limbic, and now all of a sudden we've got this disconnection that occurs as a result of that betrayed partner being in fear. So what you have to do, like I said, is you've got to identify your thoughts and your beliefs, the stories you tell yourself. These are the obsessions we talked about. What's this obsessive thinking that I go into? And I find that every betrayed partner has her own specific pattern of thoughts. And typically you're going to find that you've got 2 to 3 main thoughts that you go into, maybe some variations of those. Like I said, you recognize how it feels in your body, and then you have to identify your control behaviors that are not healthy. So you've got to understand which of your behaviors are out of balance. So if I'm going into trying to do everything perfect so that everything's going to turn out the way I want it, then I've got to look at balance. Okay, what's realistic? What are these behaviors I can let go of? Which ones are not healthy? And I need to look at those behaviors that maybe I don't have any boundaries around, and I've got to identify which of these are not getting me to the place I need to be in my recovery. Because recovery is all about balance, and it's a day-to-day struggle of trying to find that balance. Okay, So that's the first area. Number two, the betrayed partner has to choose to take control of and responsibility for their thoughts and feelings. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this and what you can do with it. So I tell betrayed partners, you're going to go into your stories. It's just a given. Whether you choose to stay on them for a long time or not is your choice. So I want you to set a time limit. I'm going to give you permission to think all your fearful thoughts, but you can do it for 5 minutes. That's it. The minute 5 minutes is over, you're going to set a timer. It's going to go off. And I want you to imagine you're going to take all your worries and you're going to put it in a box or a container. And then I want you to put it on the back shelf, or imagine you're putting it on the back burner. With some of my clients that I do EMDR with, they know the container exercise. So I encourage them to put it in the container, put the lid on, and then tuck it somewhere away where they can go to it later if they need to add more of their thoughts that create worry and fear back into the container. So we try to contain it and keep it there. Another way is you've got to stop yourself when you recognize your inner fearful thoughts. And so you do that by either visualizing that stop sign in your mind, telling yourself to stop your thoughts. I tell my clients, if your thoughts are so crazy and you can't stop them, tap the sides of your head and say, stop it, 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 at least 7 times. The other idea is when you're in it is to use the 3-second rule. You know what you think about that takes you into fear. So the minute you go to that thought, give yourself 3 seconds and you've got to change your thought. And you're going to change it by doing some kind of healthy, distractive behavior. It could be everything from self-compassion statement to a positive affirmation, to going and playing with your children, watching something that makes you laugh, but we don't want to stay in those thoughts. So another way, if let's say you can't get rid of your thoughts, as much as you've tried the 3-second rule, you've tried the stop sign, you've tried the container, then it's a good idea to journal. Because journaling is a really good way to really get out and understand what these thoughts are doing to you. And so get to your journal, write it out, think about this as getting these words, these thoughts, these feelings out of your body and onto paper. It's really important that you do this exercise because oftentimes you learn something along the way. We call it narrative therapy, and it's there to make us aware. So if you're wondering what you're so fearful for and why you keep going into fear, stop and journal and start asking yourself, okay, why am I feeling this fear? What am I concerned about? What can I do about this? Can I do anything about this? Do I need to surrender this and let it go? What do I need to do to take care of myself in this moment? There's all sorts of things that journaling will bring us to an awareness of. Okay, number 3. The betrayed partner can choose how they react when their addict partner pushes their buttons that might create fear. So I tell my betrayed partners all the time that if you're in your fear cycle and you're now in disconnection with your partner, your addict partner, you have to take a time out. And although it sounds really easy, I find that it's very difficult in the moment because that limbic fight or flight freeze part of our brain says, you have to fix it now. And we have to fix it immediately. And we're going to do it while our brains are offline, and it just won't work. So I've even had one group member come up with a plan with her husband, and that was if she goes limbic, they had a plan that he would call the timeout when he saw it because she had a difficult time. So they came up with the words he would use. You know, he would put his hand up gently and say, I think we need to take a pause on this. Why don't you go do some self-care and let's get back together in about half an hour. And so he helped guide her on that. So if you have a difficult time honoring a timeout, either your addict partners or your own, even stepping into being willing to do a timeout, then really come up with an intentional plan. It's very, very important. The other thing that a betrayed partner needs to understand is in regards to their behaviors, because when I go into fear and I've got anger, it can move me into rage. And so you need to understand what safety-seeking behaviors are abusive and damaging to the relationship. So in Rob Weiss's and Kim Buck's book, Practicing Codependence, they have an abuse inventory in there. And the women in our groups go through this inventory where they really go through different categories of their own behaviors and their partners. And it is so enlightening to the betrayed partners to understand that some of their behaviors are on the abusive side, so that they can then set boundaries and put boundaries into place. And it's everything from using shaming language to throwing things. But we need to be aware that when we're in our fear can guide us into stages of rage, and rage is never acceptable. Again, there's got to be a boundary put in place around that, not only for the betrayed partner, how they can step out of it, but even the addict partner. Oftentimes, the addict partner feels like they deserve it. And so they will allow the betrayed partner to be abusive on some level. And so it's really important that together a plan is put into place, as well as the betrayed partner having a really good, strong, healthy internal boundary around this. The other thing that's going to help keep you out of that fear and getting into rage is you've got to do daily self-care. So another internal boundary that is so necessary is you have to focus on your own recovery. You have to have daily focus on your self-care, because that's going to increase your window of tolerance. So when you get activated or triggered, you're now going to have bigger bandwidth so that you're going to be able to stay grounded. You need to know what self-care behaviors will help get you out of the fear cycle. Everybody has different behaviors that they can do, different self-care that helps them. For some people, it's I need to step away, or I need to go call somebody and talk to somebody. Other people, it's I need to go journal. Other people, it's I need to get in the car and go drive and spend 5 minutes, by myself, just sitting, in a parked car at the park. Know what works for you. Have your 2 or 3 go-to behaviors that will help you. Very, very important. You need to know when you're in a reactive state, what is something that calms me quickly and what can I do? If you can't remember what to do, then you're going to make yourself a list with bullet points or numbers, however it works for you. And you might want to add it to your first aid kit that you've got with all those different items that you've got in that first aid kit to help regulate yourself. Okay. Number 4, the betrayed partner chooses to not always focus on what their addict partner has done. This is a hard one, because in the early stages of discovery and disclosure, there is a lot of focus on that. But at some point, the betrayed partner has to choose to not only focus on that. And it's very difficult. So there's got to be a lot of intentional efforts to kind of step out of all your thinking about what they've done. And that requires that you have to come to some sort of acceptance. Now, this is a process. I don't expect a betrayed partner to do this immediately. But the goal is that the betrayed partner's got to get to a point where they know they cannot control the addict partner's recovery. They can't control the addict partner's behaviors or their likelihood of having a slip. Oftentimes, they process in group, these partners that are in so much fear that their addict partner is going to have a slip, that they think they're going to go all the way back to day number 1 in their recovery efforts. And it's not true, because you're in a different place than you were before. However, slips happen. Sometimes addict partners chooses not to do recovery the way you would like them to do. So you have to come to an acceptance that you don't have control over that. And you've got to then step into your self-care and start focusing on your self-care routines, your recovery routines. And again, it goes back to those skills and those tools that help assist you in getting grounded. You have to embrace the philosophy of the only person I can change is me. And that's really important. The next thing, the betrayed partner needs to have good internal boundaries around expecting the addict partner to make them happy, to rescue them, or to meet all of their needs. Because the fact is, they will not. It's not their responsibility to meet all of them. And part of recovery for the betrayed partner is to understand how to create their own happiness, how to step into their own power so they can take care of themselves, and to meet their own needs at times when their addict partner can't show up. Okay. So you've got to let go as a betrayed partner of the attitude of, you did this to me, so you need to fix me. I see this a lot. I see this tit for tat thing that happens where oftentimes the betrayed partner says, well, I'm not going to do this in my recovery until I see him doing this. And that's really hard to get a betrayed partner moving forward into their recovery. So they're starting to feel better when they've got that type of an approach to it. So the betrayed partner has to choose at times not to expect the addict partner to be there for them, but instead they've got to create their own support system. They've got to have people to turn to that are compassionate and empathetic, even those women in groups like I run that understand and relate to where they're at. It's really, really important that you choose to turn to these people and just not expect only the addict partner to be there for you. You've got to learn how to meet your needs and put a boundary into place around that. So think about your safety needs. What do I need to be safe? If my addict partner right now isn't safe, he's not going to be able to meet a need for me. So what can I do for myself? And that kind of leads us into some external boundaries. And we're not talking about those today, but we have talked in the past about external boundaries we can put into place for safety in regards to being in a relationship with an addict partner. So it's really important to have clarity on that, to know what the consequence is, and to follow through. Again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have a really good self-care routine. The partners that struggle the most are the ones that aren't stepping in and taking care of themselves and choosing to do things to make themselves feel better. They will often say to me, well, I feel selfish doing it, or I've never done it before, I don't know what to do. However, there's all sorts of resources. Your therapist, if you've got a group you go to, if you've got people that are there to support you, then reach out to them and ask them for ideas. That's what they're there for. Okay. The sixth internal boundary that a betrayed partner needs to consider, and that is they have to view their relationship with the addict partner with realistic expectations. So the betrayed partner needs to learn about addiction and how long it actually takes an addict partner to do their recovery. What I see happen is that the betrayed partner expects the addict partner to be moving at the same speed and in the same place in their recovery as the betrayed partner. They expect the addict partner to understand empathy because they get empathy and they've been able to understand empathy from day number one. And I oftentimes remind the betrayed partner that you've got to remember you're working out of your prefrontal cortex. So you've got strong connections to the front part of your brain. The addict is rewiring his or her brain. So they've been operating out of that limbic part of their brain, and it takes a while to do that rewiring and to step into and learn how to do empathy. And so it's really easy to get caught up in that they're not doing their recovery. And so you go into your fear. It takes a longer time. So I'm oftentimes telling betrayed partners, you need to understand that this comes later on in their recovery. So if you can keep that in mind, it's going to keep you out of fear. The last internal boundary I want to talk about is that at some point, the betrayed partner has to take personal responsibility and accountability for when they're in their fear cycle. So that means if you go into anger because you're really experiencing fear, then you go back and do the repair. You work on whatever you can do to reconnect, to do the repair in the relationship. If that means that, all of a sudden you've been eating out of control for a month, maybe you reach out for support and you decide, you know what, I'm going to come up with some things that I can do so that I'm more balanced in my eating. It may mean that if you have high expectations of your addict partner, that you look at those expectations and you see if they're realistic, and maybe even talk to the addict partner about where you're at and how you're trying to change, so you've got some accountability there. It's just really important that you recognize, even as a betrayed partner, while you have been a victim, which is a really hard word, but it's not your responsibility that this partner has had an addiction, but you do feel like you're a victim and all of this is happening to you. I understand that. I relate to that. However, we have to step out of that at some point so that we know that we can take control back of our own lives. And part of taking back control of our own lives is recognizing that we have responsibility and we have an accountability in doing our own healing. as difficult as that is. I love the day when I hear the betrayed partner say to me that regardless of what happens with my addict partner, I know I'm going to be okay. I know I've got the ability, the capabilities, the tools, the skills to handle whatever comes my way. And these internal boundaries I've talked about today, and some of these specific ideas, it's really important because fear is such an intense driving emotion. I know when I work with betrayed partners and they're trying to decide whether to stay in a relationship, out of a relationship, we're always talking about fear. When we're talking about an addict partner's recovery, fear always comes up. When we're talking about betrayal trauma, the betrayed partner fears that they will never feel better. So it's really important that we focus on our fear so that we can learn from it, set some boundaries around it, and then actively do those things that we can to get out of the fear. And so that's why I wanted to choose this topic, because I'm seeing it show up a lot. It can cause a lot more struggle and even more trauma in a betrayed partner's recovery. So hopefully this has been helpful.
It's always great content. I've got notes and I've got a highlighter. I've highlighted. We would welcome your questions at the bottom of the screen if you type them in the Q&A about boundaries, fear, or anything else that if you're a betrayed partner that you're dealing with, or if you're the person struggling with a compulsive behavior, this is the person that can help you with that. So I love that you said boundaries are a choice, and it's sometimes hard to remember that, and I often hear, and we've talked about this before too, that, boundaries, I'm setting a boundary and he won't honor it, but the boundaries are for you. It's not punitive against that person. So what do you need to hold the boundary because you value you? When you're talking about the spectrum of people and where they were on the fear cycle, I thought, what a great visual. And even like, okay, if I'm doing this every day, how do I move 2 steps over so that it's like, how do I move so that I'm less impacted, but having the visual of like, oh, I'm stuck here, and I would be able to remember where I was and either see growth, that I'm not stuck in that same, oh my goodness, it's constantly happening, or going, oh, there it is again. I love that you shared about the awareness, particularly within the body, that like if we learn to identify what's happening, like if I get a clenched gut, what does that mean? If my shoulders are, if I'm having trouble, whatever it is. And I think it's so important to understand that just because if I have it in my gut, that doesn't mean that's where other people are going to feel it. So, being in tune, and it's hard to, because I think so many people are disconnected. So learning to be in tune with, take a moment to pause and go, what is going on with my body right at this minute? You talked about having, exterior support, and you've shared before, like you have your posse of people. And I think I hear often too that, that the addict and the partner are the only support for each other. And I feel like that's a house of cards, because, you've got a very broken person and you've got a very traumatized person trying to navigate this, and things that they, that nobody knows, that they're going to have to deal with this stuff. I mean, this is foreign territory. So getting help, from qualified professionals, getting help from people who have been through this, having the support, of other people who are in the trenches with you, really makes a difference for things. The stop, I thought that was interesting, and especially when you were doing 7 times. Is that kind of like an EMDR, or is that, I mean, tell me about, what does that do to break up the cycle?
Well, one of the things that I do with my clients is I teach them what we call EFT, or tapping.
Okay.
That stands for emotional freedom technique. And
Mhm.
this is one of the meridian tapping points.
Oh,
And the reason that I have them do it there is because we're tapping right on their head, right near their brain. And so it seems to be a way to kind of make them more aware of, oh, I need to stop these thoughts. So
yeah,
that's why I have them do it like that. And it
yeah.
seems to be really effective. Now, it's kind of hard to do out in public, but when you're by yourselves, it's really, really
Mhm.
effective. And
Mhm.
sometimes if we can't get out of our thoughts, that's kind of a way to kind of remind ourselves.
Yeah, you can have the, like, I'm going to tap my wrist, I'm going to do something. I mean, like, you can come up with some more invisible thing if you're stressed. I really appreciated you talked about the 3-second rule too. And I thought, wow, that's the flip side of, because we talk to addicts all the time about, the 3-second rule, very different thing, but giving yourself, like, you have 3 seconds to go away from this. I love the set a timer. This was a while back, but I had, and it was a real wound, and I forgot what it was, but I was feeling sorry for myself. And I was like, you have 1 hour to feel sorry for myself. So I let myself feel sorry, and then I had to move on. So I didn't like try to shove it away and become resentful. I let myself do it. I grieved, and then I went and put on a funny movie, and that worked, but having the plan, and you said that too, have a plan. Like, even with the couple, it's like, if he recognizes that you are, if you are distressed and you don't see it, but having the plan and being able, both of you, to work the plan, and not turn around and go, why are you telling me this? I want to, I mean, to go, we agreed to this, we're going to try this, we can adjust it if we need to, but wow, to be able to, to move forward differently. I know for sure it's very difficult in that moment. You have to have a plan, because you'll never in that moment be able to go, yeah, we're going to take a time out. It's going to be, when this happens, and it will, we're going to take a time out. Okay, then you've agreed, when your brains are online, to the plan. Because, like, all of this stuff, I even circle, what is the goal? If the goal is to have a healthier relationship, if the goal is to value yourself, if the goal is healing, that's that. Otherwise, why do all of this? I really appreciate it too. Uh, we have to choose to work through the fear, step into courage, and I find betrayed partners who are resilient and who are going, I'm going to make it through. I love that you shared too, you see it when a partner goes, yeah, everything that the addict does or doesn't do, it just doesn't rock my world. That is where healing really is. It's like, you are not in control of them. They are not in control of you. Their stuff can, sure, can impact anybody that you're in a relationship with, but it doesn't have to rock your world. And I know early on in particular, the focus is all on, the addiction and the behaviors and all of that. It's challenging. I really appreciated too the timing. I hear all the time, he did this to me and he's got to fix it. And he is like, there's a reason why he had maladaptive coping mechanisms, and there is a reason why and he's not going to stop the behavior and then become this amazing, empathetic, honest and caring person. Like, that is, like, it's a journey, and so it's unrealistic, and it's hurtful to partners. Like, I see the hurt partners hurt, they stay stuck in the hurt, rather than going, yep, this happened to me, it sucks, and I'm going to find a path through this. It's never, yeah, I get a lot, and I'm sure you do too. I want this to all be behind me, and it's never completely behind us. We move through it. It's still part of the tapestry of our lives, so it's woven in there. We take lessons, we learn them, we have support, we build community, we use the tools that we learn. Some tools work better for me, some tools don't, but you find what works for you so that you can move forward.
Yeah, I want to circle back around to something
Please.
you talked about, and that is, and I touched on it in what I said, and that is learning from our body and our emotions. So one of the techniques I teach my clients is that we have to embrace our emotions. And oftentimes when we're in trauma, we don't want to feel them because we're already feeling so many things. But there's a technique, and that is we can sit in our emotions. And what that means is, again, notice where I feel it in my body. So I tell my clients, just thank it for showing up, notice where it's at, and then start asking it some questions. So you're going to go inward and you're going to ask, okay, fear, why are you showing up today?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. And okay, so now can I change my thinking in any way that is supporting my fear? What do you want to make me aware of? Do I need to set a boundary? Do I need to choose to let it go? So really sit and learn from it. And then learn some really good visualization breathing techniques and just allow your body to feel it. And imagine that emotion, that fear or anger or whatever it is, as you're breathing, you can just imagine it moving down through your body with every breath until it goes out the bottoms of your feet. We don't learn as human beings how to experience emotions, especially the distressing hard ones. We either give into it, right? Or we want to push it away. And really our emotions are there to protect us, to make us aware of something. So it's so much easier to handle even hard emotions when we stop for just a moment, sit in it, and try to learn from it. So that's just a thought I had.
No, and I really appreciate that. And there are so many grounding exercises. Troy Love talks about, and I won't remember all of them. Email me if you want it, but it's like 7 smells. Six things you see right now. I mean, like he counts it down, and I thought, well, it's brilliant because you're like you have to pay attention, count, 7 things and then 6 things, and whatever it is, the things you hear. So like it's going through kind of all of your senses and what are you experiencing. Guess what? By the time you get done with that, you are grounded and you're centered again, and now you're able to take on whatever it is, in a different way, at least. But there's so many different ones. So, and I'm sure there's apps and lots of things. So find something that works for you. Have a couple of them. So like if this one isn't working for you, have the next one. So you've got a plan. I always think have a plan, because when you're triggered, when you're highly fearful, when you're whatever, you can't show up for yourself, which is really what we're talking about. Boundaries are you're showing up for yourself. So, okay. The first question: I'm currently separated from my SA husband for the past 2 months after 8 years of betrayal with an affair partner. Now his affair partner is sending me texts, which is triggering, as I have left my contact. Oh, as I have left, why contact me? I got it. Okay. I tried journaling, exercise, talking it out. I have blocked the number, but still getting to me. I hear ya. That is, and I'm going like a really broken person in the affair partner too. So, I mean, that's just like vengeful. So
That is, I just want to say that is a very difficult, complex situation that you're dealing with. And, sometimes we have to put really hard boundaries into place. And I'm not sure because, there's limited details that you've given us. And this affair partner, as they're contacting you in any way, is it threatening? Do you fear for your safety? So a plan has to be put into place. Obviously, you've blocked them. You may even need to change your phone number. There's some of those types of things, all the way to getting some type of a court order
yes,
that protects you.
I
And
was
that's
thinking the same thing.
to do.
Yeah.
It is very hard to do. And I've
Yeah.
had to help clients with that. And there's even fear in doing that, even though it's put into place to help protect us. And so I'm not sure how much contact you have with your sex addict partner, but I think I would start with him and putting some boundaries in place with him. I don't know from your question whether they're still together or they're not together, but I think maybe you need to include a support group in with you, so you have people to turn to, especially when this person is trying to contact you. I like the fact that you're exercising, you're journaling. I would add to that, have your people you go to. Like Tammy mentioned, I had people that I would go to for specific things. So if you've got somebody who's even an attorney friend, you might go to them and ask, okay, what can I do legally? If you've got somebody that helps calm you and you're having a difficult time regulating your emotions, go spend time with them. All I can say is don't isolate. Make sure you have lots of support. Reach out and get information on this, on how you can protect yourself from somebody that you don't want to have contacting you. Hopefully you've got a therapist you're working with as well. And then if you have the ability to create a plan with your sex addict husband or partner, then I would say, see if you can come up with some kind of safety plan. If not, then turn to your therapist. If you've got a group, if you've got wise, supportive friends or family members, but come up with some type of a safety plan. Oftentimes when you reach out to other people, I find that they come up with ideas and suggestions that you might not ever think of. And that's what I learned with the women in my groups. When people ask for, I need input, I need some ideas, and they come up with such really awesome things to do. So I can't emphasize enough the fact that you really need to reach out, put some support into place. You've got a good start with the journaling, the exercising, and talking it out, but really, hopefully, get a very, very well-defined plan.
And she did mention still together, yes, that the affair partner, and yes, yeah, and I was thinking physical. I always think about safety, physical safety, emotional safety, financial safety, spiritual safety. So physical safety, be aware of your surroundings, be hyper vigilant, because somebody who's doing that type of thing, it would make me extra vigilant. If and a check. I mean, if there are things that feel threatening, even having a court, or a police report, may be useful. So reach out to the legal services around you, the protection services around you, and see what you need to do. If you have if your now estranged husband is, if I don't know if he cares, it's really hard to know, but you could say, this is problematic. You guys are together, so leave me out of it. But I love that you're doing self-care things. I love that you're here, and I think Debbie's suggestion of, ask others for what else, what am I missing? What else can I do to take care of myself? But in my opinion, good for you that, those are two very broken people. So good for you for taking the step to take care of you. So,
Yeah, and don't be too cautious. Oftentimes we fear, I should say, that putting a boundary into place because of how someone might perceive us, or it might be, might look like it's way over the top, but you can never be too cautious about making sure you stay safe. So I encourage you to do whatever you need to do to create safety for you, your family, and those around you.
yeah. Okay. The next one, this is a great question. We get these. Can you give examples of some boundaries? Mine seem to be, I will not spend time with my spouse if.
Okay. And are they also the follow-up? There's another one.
I don't think so. But
Okay.
let's take them as separate. So
let's do it. Okay. So I will not spend time with my husband if they do something I'm assuming that either is triggering for you or is crossing a boundary. I'm not quite sure there, but I think it's really an important thing to understand. First of all, what do you need as far as your recovery? What's going to create safety for you? So you have to stop and kind of look at it, first of all, through those lenses. So that's where external boundaries come into place with your husband. And so you've got to be very clear on, okay, what is a healthy external boundary? So an external boundary is a boundary that I place, or I put into place. I think of it as a framework so that I am safe from other people. And typically, the boundary doesn't have a really controlling, punitive consequence, but what you're doing in reality is quite right. There's kind of a natural effect of, you're not safe, so I need to step away from you, and that is the consequence. Or I need you to move to another room, or we need to separate for a couple of months so I can establish safety before we come back together. So it'd be a good idea for you to kind of go through and look at, okay, what are the triggering behaviors that your partner has right now, right? Think about it in terms of your own safety. Okay, is this safe? Is it just irritating, or is this really something that's affecting my recovery? Is it making me feel unsafe? For example, is he minimizing my pain? To me, that's unsafe, as opposed to, he's not taking out the garbage when I ask him to, he's not listening to me. Well, that might be considered kind of normal, and maybe it's a bad habit, but you'll still stay safe even if the garbage isn't taken out. So you've got to look at it that way. So now I understand, right, that I've got this need, this relational need. I need to make sure that this need has a safety issue to it, and then I've got to put the boundary into place. And like I said, most oftentimes we say it by, if you choose to minimize my pain, then I am going to step away and go take care of myself and call my friend and talk to them. So lots of times as I step away from the relationship, we as human beings do not like disconnection. We are wired for connection. So when our partners move away from us because they don't feel safe, we feel the effects of it. So it is a really, it's kind of an effective tool, right, for a boundary. We want safety. At the same time, tell your partner what it looks like. So I need you to do this. And the problem we get into oftentimes is betrayed partners will say something like, I need respect, right? Or I need consistency. And your idea of respect and your partner's idea of respect, they look totally different. So I teach my clients, you've got to go further and say, here's what it would look like. Here's what I would see you doing if you were creating this safety. Would you be willing to do that for me? And remember, it's a choice. Like I said, boundaries are a choice. So if you choose not to do that, then I can't spend time with you. Instead, I'm going to spend time with my family or my friends or with the kids because it doesn't feel safe to be with you. So I would go through and do a little bit more, kind of see which areas and what are your big sticking points as far as the boundaries go. And I know that not spending time with your spouse, that's part of it, but there might be some other ways you can just kind of tweak it. Like I'll leave the conversation, right, and take a break for a couple of hours. It might not just be, I'm not going to talk to you for several days. That's not as healthy.
I so appreciate that, and the I always call them the nebulous. Like, I want you to show empathy. What does that look like? What are you looking for from your spouse to show you? What are they going to do? Teach them what you because anything that is, I want you to be consistent. Well, they can be consistently in their addiction, I mean, so yes, having a very clear, this is what it is. I also think for boundaries, even starting with, I value myself, so I need to take care of me. So you're taking it like, I'm taking care of me. This isn't because you aren't doing this. It's not punitive. It's not controlling. It's, I am empowering myself. I am taking my physical, emotional, financial, and spiritual. Those are the ones I look at. So what do I need for my personal safety on those levels? And I think taking time and looking at what is it I need. It's like food and water, you need those. Well, what else do I need, as part of being a human being? And then if my partner can't meet those needs, like you said, having more people so that I'm not the only person for my spouse and my spouse isn't the only person for me. How do we find the people that can support us in those needs? Their needs, not wants. Wants are different. So it's really key. But I love that you shared, be specific.
Yeah, and I want to just kind of add to what you said, because I do take, clients and group members through some stages on these boundaries. And one of them is, like I said, you've got to identify where's that need, what's that relational need. And then we step into, what do I have a right to, right? And we all have rights. A lot of times the betrayed partner doesn't understand that. I have a right to change my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I have a right to put a boundary in place around this. I have a right to, have you ask before you touch me. I have a right, for that physical safety, because I think it's really important to step into that understanding that you have a right to this, so that then we feel more empowered when we set that boundary and we can maintain it. So I just wanted to add that little piece to it.
Yeah, and I really think this is an exercise better done with support, with your professional, with your peer, with your posse, whatever it is, because it's hard to figure this all out and decide, do I advocate for myself or is this too much? So getting the help and input, I think, will be useful for you. But I'm glad you're here asking that. That's a great question. Okay, next question. I have a hard time deciding what is normal marriage behaviors versus relapse behaviors.
Well, I think you should go back and look at the webinar I did on how to know if your partner's in recovery or not, because that will help you understand what relapse behaviors look like. It might be a good idea if you can have a nice, logical, grounded, informative conversation with your addict partner to ask them, what's your awareness of your relapse behaviors? What are the things that you do that lead you into being, triggered to want to act out? What's your awareness there? So in addition to that, you understand as well, you gain that knowledge of addiction and what relapse behaviors will look like. For each addict, their relapse behaviors are going to be different. So I wish I could tell you it looks like this, this, and this, but I'm going to tell you some of the ones I hear the most often. And that is that I often hear them say, I feel a disconnection occur. All of a sudden, my addict partner starts acting different. I can just feel it and I can just see it. All of a sudden, they've disconnected. When they're in recovery, it feels different. They're more present. Sometimes they'll say my intuition's just telling me, oh, they're not doing some good things. You know, I'm watching them and they're not doing their self-care. And I don't see them. I see them skipping going to their SA group, or I don't see them getting into their therapist, you know, on a weekly basis. So that would be something that would indicate to me, oh, that's relapse behavior. Now, I do know that at times some addicts have a lot of shame. And with shame comes defensiveness, anger, and blame. And some people who have shame as well will do that even in a normal marriage, but it may be even intensified when you're in a relationship with an addict. So all of those behaviors to me are indicators that maybe there needs to be boundaries put into place, that shame should not be a normal part of marriage. And sometimes it's even more intensified, like I said, when the addict partner is in their addiction or they're trying to work through that denial and get to a place of accountability. It's very, very difficult. But I think it would be good to kind of make a list again. I'm all about analyzing and looking this through. Journal what you think is, you know, not, you know, what is more relapse type behaviors. And then I would think, you know, ask a friend, is this normal? Do you ever see this in marriage? Ask several friends you trust. You know, maybe get some feedback from them. Or if you've got a group you go to, go in and take it to the group. The group is such a great resource, and they'll be able to give you some specifics on that as well.
And I was like, trust your gut. If you're wondering if this is, you know, like just you said, I have this intuition, something's a little different. That is, what's in his middle circle. I'm using he and she. What's in his middle circle? If you're seeing it's action, what are you seeing? It's not, oh yeah, I'm doing fine, I'm doing all my things, I'm never gonna do it, whatever. It's not lips, it's action. But to me, this is like, if you're starting to feel like things are a little different, a little off, that would be, cause for concern. If you're at a point where you guys can have the conversation, even like Debbie was sharing, it's like when the betrayed partner was, going offline and the addict was able to say, let's take a break. But having the conversation of like, I'm feeling a disconnect, can we have a conversation about what you're doing for your recovery work and how can we connect differently? Are you struggling? If you're doing, Debbie has you've talked the fine check-in, right? Yeah, I need to get that one from you because I share Fanos all the time. But I was like, Debbie has the fine one, but if you're doing a daily check-in, hopefully that's honesty. If the goal is connecting and having a foundation of honesty and integrity in the relationship, then both of you showing up, that's communicating is how to start.
Mm-hmm. And I'll quickly tell you what FINE stands for.
Thank you.
Quick check-in. So the F in FINE stands for sharing a feeling word. We don't discuss it. It's just a snapshot as to here's where I'm at in this moment as far as my emotion goes. The I stands for either here's my intention for today, here's what I'm going to be doing in my recovery work, or information. Here's information that I think you need to know so that you'll feel safe. The N is a need that you have. So you can turn to your partner and say, I need this from you. Would you be willing to do? And then you explain what it is. And E stands for express gratitude. We end it with gratitude. What I like about it, it's quick, it's easy, it gives us a lot of information. And this type of a check-in should take no more than 10 minutes. It should be pretty quick. If you need more time, you can set a little timer and say, okay, we'll do another 5 minutes, but you don't want it long and drawn out.
No, and I say with Fanos, it's similarly, it's like 2 minutes. You guys can do this most of the time in 2 minutes each, but both of you doing it because that's how you build communication and connection. It isn't just the addict coming and telling, and yeah, I mean, because that puts you guys in a power differential, and they already are, and I get all that. But if you're trying to build a healing relationship and partnership, it needs to be a little different. So we got 2 more questions. Okay, what if your husband has been making progress with his recovery, both seeing CSATs, doing work groups, he's in community group and is showing by his actions that he's doing well, and I feel like I want to lean into him more and more. However, I still get triggered over small things. For example, driving by the city where my SA husband acted out. Does that ever stop?
Yes, but it takes work. And I'm going to give you a tool right now that'll help you. And again, it's found in Rob Weiss's and Kim Buck's book called Practicing Prodependence. So you can even go and purchase that yourself, even though it's written for professionals. Oh, good. You have it. Mine's at work.
I
So
do.
so
I do
to
right here.
me,
Practicing, and it's on our list. It's on the list on the website too.
at the back, you will find this exercise. It's called the Shame Prevention Plan. It talks to you about the fact that you will have triggers. They are not, you're not responsible for them. They are really kind of out of your control. And as a result, what it does is it's going to take you through a variety of steps. It helps you understand what that trigger is about. So you're going to go through, you're going to talk about, okay, what was the situation when it happened? What emotions did it bring up? What's the shame-based belief? And then you're going to go through, what is the critical thought that comes up? So I have my clients go through and write all the critical thoughts, and then they go back and they change each critical thought to a compassionate thought. So the more you do this, the more as you're triggered, you recognize, oh, here's my negative thinking I'm going into. Here's what I'm telling myself. And then we correct it with a compassionate thought. It's going to pull you out of that trigger. And the more you do it, the more your brain is going to get on board. It's just like riding a bike. Takes a while. First 2 times you ride a bike, you fall over a lot until one day you get on and all of a sudden you're riding. You don't know why it's any different. Same thing with the brain. So I would recommend you get that shame prevention plan sheet and that you go through the exercise, because it will really, really help you go a little bit deeper into your triggers, because you might have a thought pattern that you go into every time, and you can work on changing that one thought pattern.
It's on page 160. I looked it up in the book, but I can absolutely guarantee you that it can change, because I had that with a geographic location, and it was a city, and even just driving by the city, I was like, this was from an addict standpoint, but it was where I acted out all the time. So, and you know what? I ended up later working in that town, and and you know what? I felt I was able to take it and make it like the city had no control over me. It was, my actions and how I've changed was really what the focus was. So page 160 in the book, and the books are listed on our website. And the last question: what kind of boundaries do you set up 3 months after D-Day? I'm stuck and still in shock and so very angry. He doesn't even seem to care anymore. He did it in the beginning, but has gotten more distant as my triggers make him very uncomfortable. He says it just makes him feel guilty. Well, isn't that too bad? Seriously, we are in separate rooms, but not sure what I need to do. It feels weird being around each other in a confined area and not engaging. This is the strangest situation I've had.
This is a great question. So 3 things I want to tell you. First of all, oftentimes women after disclosure have these types of reactions. It's really important that you go a little bit deeper in the help that you're getting. So what that means with my clients is I will do some EMDR with them. I do some kind of trauma processing with them, because sometimes we have to help the brain process what we've heard, because it's kind of overwhelming and traumatic. I'll either use that or something called accelerated resolution therapy. Both are very, very effective. So you can start working on you. So I really want you to focus on, what do I need to do to recover from my betrayal? Because discovery or disclosure can actually feel like betrayal again. I believe also that your husband probably has a bit of an avoidant attachment pattern. And so therefore, they don't like it when somebody's not happy with them, and they do have a tendency to pull away. They don't know what to do. So again, get into couples therapy if you're not doing that already. Let's start working through this so that you guys can then kind of come up with a plan and work on it in a therapist's office. And when you're having some problems, in the relationship, then you guys can go in and have a third party to help. So again, start focusing on healing you, and then get some help so we can start working on repairing this attachment.
I agree. get support from you from a codependent lens. I just put in, so sorry, I just put in the, in your question too, I don't hear him doing any work. So if he stopped the problematic behavior, I use the analogy that's like a dry drunk. I stopped, I'm abstinent, but I haven't changed at all. So him going to the drop-in groups that are free, him doing, like the sex addiction 101 or porn addiction 101 work group, all of those eventually after he's got a solid foundation, then doing some inner child, doing the attachment wounds, all of those things help to start make things different. But if he's just stopped, then you guys are at a, you have a big gap. So you leaning in and getting the support that you need, no matter what he does or doesn't do. But hopefully, I mean, living in recovery is so good that if every addict understood, they'd be, jumping through hoops to get to this side of it. So, so anyway, we are more than out of time. I come back into the Zoom room and we'll catch up. Okay. Bye, everybody.